Now, what I also notice is that some people who really want to start off investing in real estate here in Germany really want to invest in a top location, ideally then have a really high cash flow, but also want to make sure that they're buying below the market price, right?
Yeah.
And that's something I hear all the time as well. People approach me, and I'm sure they approach you as well, that they're really looking for this top deal in which everything makes sense financially. Is that a reality? Question over to you.
There's a specific German term for that. It's called the eierlegende Wollmilchsau. Right? Like you should have a decent salary, right? I always say like 60,000 plus or something. Now you have like 3,000 euros like netto, which is gonna be the case for most people who like think about real estate investing. And I always say you need to be responsible with your finances. Once that like in the Indian culture is like very high prestige and a very high life goal to have own real estate that you live in yourself. And what's important to understand is that in Germany that is very unbeneficial, right? For several reasons. The main reason is the tax reason. So and then the important thing is what is in 10 years, which you see in this part basically. So with a 2% appreciation, your property is worth 339,000 euros. You still have remaining debt of 225,000 euros. You put in initially 30,000 or 28,000, right? You got a accumulated after tax cash flow of 11,000, means your netto profit, your after tax profit is 97,000 euros.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Hans. You know my channel already, Hans German Realty. I help expats find, analyze, and invest in properties here in Germany. And today I have a very special guest on my YouTube channel. Welcome, David from InVertas. David, we've been in touch for quite a while now. I know you're invested in the German real estate market as well. Very warm welcome to my channel here. Today we're going to talk about really interesting subjects. You'll bring along a couple of investment profiles or real estate properties, which we're going to have a closer look at. But first, I'd like to introduce you really quickly to my audience. So you are with InVertas, right? And you provide real estate properties to investors here in Germany, especially also expats. You also provide a bunch of other services, sort of insurances as well. I think you have two firms, right? A retirement planning part and then also another part. Today, we're going to focus on this real estate part. And this is what we're going to talk about in this video as well. I know that you yourself have been invested in the market as well. You've bought 6 properties, I think, together with your wife, right? So maybe we can dive deeper a little bit into that during our call here. But first, again, a very warm welcome on my channel here. I'm glad to have you here, and then let's dive in, I'd say.
Thank you, Hans, for the very warm introduction. Thank you for having me. And I want to point out at the beginning that I really appreciate what you do for the expert community, because we know how the struggles also with the language and then in the German system and all of that you and I think you really provide very valuable content on the topic that really shows expert how it can be concretely done, not just like on a conceptual standpoint, but how you actually do it concretely and walk them through your journey with all the highs and lows. And yeah, I think that's very valuable for the expert community who want to invest in real estate and build their life and their wealth here in Germany. So thank you for the great work, as I know how much work and effort goes into making those videos. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of work, of course, yeah, but it's also very fun, right? I get to meet great people like you guys and expats and so on. So it's really also very fun. Cool. I'd say let's dive into it, right? First, I'd like to talk about a very interesting topic, which is the misconceptions about real estate, right? What I always hear from expats is that there are so many misconceptions and they don't really know how to really start when it comes to investing in real estate here in Germany. I'm sure you've heard a bunch of them as well in your sort of consulting part of it. But maybe we can talk about just a few of these misconceptions, right? I think the first one is something I hear a lot about and a question I receive, and I'm sure you as well, several times is whether people should invest in their own house or their own apartment, buy their own flat in which they can then move in, or whether they should buy an apartment or a house to then rent it out. Do you have an opinion on this topic?
Yeah, I have a very strong and controversial opinion on this topic, because it's a question that obviously we also get a lot, and then, like, with literally all of my friends also, this is a discussion, because for many people it's like they have it so ingrained in the brain that basically owning a real estate for yourself and having your own house or your own apartment, especially, for example, also in the Indian culture, we have a lot of Indian clients. That's like some close clients like explained this to me once, that like in the Indian culture, it's like very high prestige and a very high life goal to have an like a own real estate that you live in yourself. And what's important to understand is that in Germany, that is very unbeneficial, right? For several reasons. The main reason is the tax reason. So there are two big reasons. One is the tax reason. The second one is the location part. And it's different in many parts of the world. But in Germany, when you buy real estate for yourself, you pay everything out of already taxed income, right? So you cannot deduct the interest payments to the bank. You cannot deduct the repairs that you do, and you do not have a depreciation of the property, right? Versus when you buy as an investment, right, you can deduct 100% of the interest that you pay to the bank. You can deduct most of the repairs if you do it smartly. And your property depreciates in value on the tax side. So you make a loss on the tax side, even though it goes up in the real world, which is of course very, very good for your investment. So that's like the first part that makes a huge difference long term, because usually when you look to buy real estate, then you have like a decent job, a decent salary, have maybe some money saved up, of course. And then the tax side is a very important one. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is the location. So most experts that are our clients, I would say like literally 50% live in Berlin, and like you also, Hans.
Right.
But like Berlin is really the expert hotspot of Germany, but almost all of our clients live in the big cities. So Berlin, Hamburg, Düsseldorf, Frankfurt, and Munich, right? So this is where the big majority lives. And the intuitive thought maybe is to say, okay, I live here, I know the area and all of that, I'm familiar here. I want to buy something here for myself. Right. And this is like the biggest mistake I see many experts make, is like buy an apartment in a big city. And the reason for that is that for investment purposes, the big cities are, in my opinion, and I think we share a very same philosophy on that. That the big cities is not good for a starting investment, right? Because essentially what our philosophy is that like the mortgage payment that you have should be like covered by the rental income and the tax advantages that you have, right? We will get to that later, but when you buy in the big cities, right, then your yes, the rents are high, right, but the prices are even higher, right? So usually you either have to pull massive equity into that property, right, or you have a very high mortgage, right? And that is very, very unbeneficial for your wealth building, because when you buy one of or maybe two of those properties, then the bank will say, no, you're not getting any more loans. You cannot buy any more properties, because maybe your mortgage is 1,000 and your rental income is like 500 maybe, right? Or 2,000 and 1,000. Or if you buy for yourself, then you pay significantly higher mortgage than you would have paid in rent, right? And please, before people write like in the comments, oh, I pay the same mortgage as I do rent, right? I had a client tell me once, very, very proud of, and say, hey, David, I just bought an apartment. It's a Neubau. It's very nice. And I pay the same amount of mortgage as I pay rent. And I was okay. And how much equity did you put into that? He said, yeah, 300,000.
Wow. Okay.
And I said, okay.
Well, then of course,
that 300,000 is gone now. It's like stuck in the deal. So when you really finance 100 or 110% even, which would be the fair comparison, then your mortgage is in 99% of cases higher than your rent. So those are the two big reasons I would not buy something for myself, right? You mentioned it, like me and my wife, we live like in a rent. We are renters, right? Because we also live in a nice city with high prices. Yes, high rents, but very high prices. and we have 6 investment properties at the same time. So we also live ourselves by that philosophy, basically. But that's
Definitely.
the first mindset shift that you have to make in order to go into the real estate investing. If you already have bought something, then that's cool and it's fine, and hopefully you have some cash left after that and can still invest. But if you're looking from a purely financial perspective, then I would always recommend keep on renting, right, and then buy investment properties, right? The only exception is when you say, hey, this is like an emotionally very important for me, right?
If you want to have that house in some specific area.
Exactly. So when it has big emotional value for you, then I'm the last person to speak against that, right? Then go for it, but be aware that it's not the smartest financial decision, but a luxury decision for yourself, right? And like when I ask people, why do you want to buy for yourself? Like the 4 out of the 5 reasons are financial reasons, right? And for those financial reasons, you would be way better off owning rental properties. Right? So that's like the first big misconceptions where I'm sure there's a lot of controversy. Write your opinion in the comments. But that's just a mathematical approach to it.
Yeah, and I totally follow that philosophy as well, right? I mean, you saw that, or my viewers know that already. I have a bunch of properties, like 14 at the moment in the south of Germany.
So nice.
However, I rent my own apartment here in Berlin, right? Because we got lucky. We have a really cheap rent. It's very cheap overall, and it wouldn't really make sense for us to buy a property here, then pay as much in mortgage for the mortgage itself. So that's really not an option here at the moment. And many people follow that same approach, right? Really big investors as well. They say buy your investment properties, rent them out, but rent yourself an apartment in which you then live. Okay, so there are a couple of other misconceptions as well, right? We also touched on that point that many people are living in these big cities like Berlin, Munich, Frankfurt, or whatever, right? In these big cities, of course, the prices are very high. You already just mentioned that as well. Now, what I also notice is that some people who really want to start off investing in real estate here in Germany really want to invest in a top location, ideally then have a really high cash flow, but also want to make sure that they're buying below the market price, right? That's something I hear all the time as well. People approach me, and I'm sure they approach you as well, that they're really looking for this top deal in which everything makes sense financially. Is that a reality? Question over to you.
There's a specific German term for that. It's called the eierlegende Wollmilchsau, right? Some of the experts who are longer in Germany and know a bit of German know that. So that basically is a term for something that has everything included, which is unrealistic, right? So if you're looking for that, what Hans just described basically, then if you keep that conception, then you're never gonna buy a property, because something like this simply doesn't exist, right? And I always like to call it when like people show like very good, their top deals of their life, right? When they have like 14 units or 6 or 100 units, they show the top deal, right? Which is then a very, very good deal, which might fit some of those criteria, right? But I always call that investment pornography, right? Because it's like just not realistic, right?
What about the other deals which they're not showing, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So it's not helpful. It's very nice, for example, an apartment in Freiburg that you bought that has like 500 euros cash flow. I watched the video. I found it very, very nice. But that's like one deal out of like 14, right? And you first got to buy 14 properties to maybe stumble on a deal like that. So like the important thing is that you have this mindset switch from knowing, okay, every property has disadvantages, right? There is no perfect real estate deal. Right? You cannot buy a Neubau, like a newly constructed in Munich inner city that has positive cash flow that you can buy without any equity, right? That's just not there. When you want to buy in a very good location, right, and the newer the property gets, the higher the square meter prices, and the worse is your rental yield. Right? If you want to buy Munich, then be okay to have 2.5% rental yield, or 3%, right? And have a massively negative cash flow. Then it's okay, but don't expect a very good location with a very good cash flow. That just doesn't add up.
I mean, there's 1 in 1,000 deals in which you can actually get that, right? Even you mentioned it just now, I got lucky with some of these properties, but I also do have properties which are highly cash flow negative and in which I still invest for other reasons, of course. But even with that one you just described, the one where I make a significant amount of positive cash flow, right? Even with that one, you always have to keep in your mind that there are significant renovations upcoming for that specific house as well, right? So it's not always just this one dimension of just cash flow or the current status or condition of the property. It's always a range of factors which you have to consider.
Exactly, and it's like very important just to know that every property also has disadvantages, right? If you want to buy very cash flow positive and for a good square meter price, then yes, the property is gonna be older and is gonna be in a location that reflects the price, and that's like a big reason why, for example, some people never buy a real estate, because they get presented a property, for example, also by our company, they get presented a property. And of course, with every property, there's things that you can say, oh, I don't like this, I don't like that. But that's totally normal, right? There is no perfect deal. And that's just very important to know. And I really like that you give also people a realistic perspective with this, with showing these things. And that, for example, that properties that have a very high depreciation or very high cash flow, that they are very old, and very old properties, like 100 years old properties, of course you're gonna have more renovation than with 50-year-old property or with a 20-year-old property, right?
Totally.
That's just totally normal, and you have to have this mindset switch to say, okay, no investment is perfect. Every rental property has its flaws and has its disadvantages, right? When the deal overall makes sense, then just start, right? Also, the first apartment that I bought was cash flow negative, but I'm still very happy that I bought it because it got me started. And every even the worst cash flow negative apartments will develop over time, like the time heals those wounds, I always say. So it's like very important just to get started, because although this apartment I'm gonna sell in 10 years or in whatever years for multiple 5 figures profit, right? So even if it was not the perfect deal, I'm still gonna be making a lot of money on that. So and if I waited and looked, and if I waited and look, oh no, I want to buy the perfect thing, then I would have never bought this. And like a mentor once to me said, which I found a very good quote, like the best time to buy real estate was 100 years ago, or 50 years ago, or whatever number you would like to name. The second best is now. And totally that true. I find a very, very good quote.
And it's very difficult to time the market. Nobody can get it right? There's so many factors as well regarding all of this. Maybe that's subject to another video at some point, but very, very interesting discussion. Yeah, totally. Okay, cool. Maybe before we jump into a property which you're going to show us here in a second, maybe one last misconception, and also one question I have, and one question I receive myself a lot of times, right? The people are always asking themselves, what is sort of the amount of salary needed, or can I even finance a property with my salary, and how much equity do I even need with this or from this? Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Of course, we check that when investors approach us, we check those criteria. If those don't fit, then you cannot even speak with us. But like, you should have a decent salary, right? I always say like 60,000 plus or something. Now you have like 3,000 euros like netto, which is gonna be the case for most people who like think about real estate investing. And I always say you need to be responsible with your finances, right? You can have a high salary, but when you have very high expenses because you have very high consumption, then the bank still doesn't like you, essentially, right? So I have clients who make 6 figures, right? But they have a very big house, they have 2 big cars, they have kids in private school, and they have a loan for this and that, this and that, right? And then still the bank says, and have very little money saved up. And still the bank says, we're not comfortable with financing you, right? Because like, you may have 6,000 euros netto, but you're spending 5,500 per month, right? So it's, and then I have clients who have 3,000 netto, but live very frugal, have like a apartment in their means, don't have consumption credit and all of that, and have money saved up just from their job, and they are perfectly financeable.
Right. So it's a range of factors again, right?
Yeah,
like
so
one part, what is sort of the salary needed for that? Then, of course, below that, how much are you actually spending, let's say, on a monthly basis? What is sort of left in terms of your income and expenses? How much can you actually invest on a monthly basis? And then also how much equity do you have saved up in addition to like an overall check? And that's actually what the banks do, right? They're checking your credit worthiness to then determine whether they would hand out a loan to you or not, right?
Exactly. So they look at like your internal balance sheet. They always say how much is going in, how much is going out. And when there's a good gap there, then perfect, right?
Yep.
And of course, they look, you have to have some just money on the bank account. I always say to get started, like with a property that's like 200, 250,000, which is the typical starting range, you should have like 30 to 40,000 just on your bank account, or maybe in ETFs that you can sell if it's needed. So you need to have some money saved up, which you automatically have when you have like this gap in your internal balance sheet, right?
Yep.
So
Totally.
there's nobody who saves 1,000 euros per month and then says I have no money. Then you're not saving.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
So it's just like you can be financed just when you deal with your finances right and have a decent job and have some down payment saved. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And I'd say that's totally achievable and doable, right? I mean, if you have a decent salary, as you said, I mean, 60,000, of course, is good, but it's not overwhelmingly much. So I think it's very much doable, and many people, if they want to, they can actually do it, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Okay, great. So I would say, if that's okay for you, let's jump into sort of the first property you've brought along. Maybe you can just dive a little bit deeper into where it is at the moment, and then we can really go into the details of maybe the financials.
Yeah, so maybe to start with, like to get an overall picture of what we do, right? So we basically offer an all-inclusive service for investors, right? So we basically, what we do is we look for good investment properties that fit our criteria that I'm going to explain in a second. And then we look at the investor side, how much do you make, how much room do you have in your Haushaltsrechnung, how much equity do you have saved up, what are your goals with investing, what is your time frame and all of that. And so that's the investor side, and then we filter properties very strictly, right? Regarding this investment philosophy that we initially said. So we always so we mainly focus on properties in southern Germany, right? Just like you do. Why is that? Because like in southern Germany, we have very, very good infrastructure, right? There's like very many, very good infrastructure, many companies, and like also almost all of the hidden champions of Germany sit like in southern Germany. So like there's like a economy professor once said, like in an interview, some of the people know him, like from the investing side, Gerd Kommer and Andreas Beck. And Andreas Beck said, behind every small village in Baden-Württemberg, there's a company with their own research and development department. Right. Yep. So in southern Germany, we can actually go also in smaller locations, right, and still have very good jobs, very good infrastructures, and very solid companies with, very good outlook. So that's why we invest there, because we are very sure there, right? For example, in parts like east of Germany, you have to be very selective and very careful because also people are moving away from the east into the south. Most of the migration happening to Germany is also in the south, right? From exports, for example, and also other migration. And essentially, there are like 800,000 apartments too little that we have, like in overall Germany, and like 2 million apartments missing in like southern Germany. Because in the east there are villages who are half empty, right? Like in the south there are like 2 million apartments missing, and like building new apartments is very, very expensive. I mean, we can get to that also maybe in another time, but building new apartments is very, very expensive. So like the rental demand in southern Germany is very high. Everyone who lives there knows that when trying to find an apartment, and it's also gonna be, what's very important, also gonna be that way in 10 years.
That's also what I'm thinking. And that's why I'm sort of also building up my portfolio here in the south of Germany. And as you said, right, I mean, the rental situation is just insane in the south, like in cities like Karlsruhe, Heidelberg, Freiburg, München, all of these cities, right, especially if they have universities in them. In these cities, it's really crazy.
And also in the smaller cities, like also in the Speckgürtel, where we have a lot of properties, and in like smaller cities where there's just good jobs there and good infrastructure.
Totally.
It's insane rental demand. Like the rent market is crazy in almost all southern Germany. Of course, it's always on a scope, right? And what we essentially do with clients, we guide them through the entire, like looking for an apartment that then fits them, presenting it. We check the entire financing. So we have an entire financing department with another company internally with us. It's two separate companies, but we do everything in-house essentially, where we compare over 400 banks in order to get the best rates essentially and get the financing done in the first place. So guide you through that entire buying process, right? And then also beyond that, we recommend you a Hausverwaltung, so like a property management. Right? So I know that there are different philosophies there. But for example, you manage all of your properties yourself, as far as I know, because you're regularly in Freiburg and you're having fun doing that. Is sort of like a bit of a passion, I would say, with you. For example, I have property managers in all of the apartments because like both me and my wife are very like involved in our careers and business and passionate about that and put a lot of time into that and don't want to take care of like apartments and getting calls from tenants or coordinating fixing something. So for me, the property manager does everything. I never have to be there physically, right? So some properties outside of Kaiserslautern, for example, I'm never there. Right? I'm just coordinating with my property manager via WhatsApp or telephone if there's something, and that's it.
Okay,
right?
cool.
So, and most of our clients also want that. They don't want to like drive there or whatever, and do things themselves. They want to have it managed, have it as an investment, and have everything run by the property manager. So when something breaks.
That's probably true for most expats, right?
Yeah.
I mean, most of them have as you said, right, like a very good job. They are very busy with their main job. And then if they want to do this investment, they don't want to take care of managing the investment itself. Rather get one of you guys or like a management company in that sense to take care of it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not obligatory. It's also not our company. We just recommend companies that we know. It costs $50 per month per apartment, which for me is very, very worthwhile. The time and like headspace also that I save with that. And we also do all of our calculations, including the property management. Every cost also is included. There's no secret or hidden cost or anything. Also for the management, we also always put the 50 euros in the calculation, essentially, which I find very important. So getting into concrete examples, which always I think very, very interesting to have some concrete numbers and some concrete examples. Of course, these are just examples of properties that are also not available anymore. What we do in the consulting, that we look at your individual situation, see exactly what fits you, what are your wishes, what are your equity, what you want to buy, and then search a property specifically for that. So these are just examples that like will fit most of like people who want to begin and step into like the real estate investing.
Right.
Okay. And there are essentially 2 or 3 categories when we look at that. Today, I'm going to show some Bestandsgebäude. That means like already existing buildings, right? That are already there. They are already rented. They have been operating like for a long time, which is also the sort of investment that you do and that I privately also do. Right? I'm going to show 2 examples there. One with a very, very good location. The other one with a high cash flow. Right? The other part, basically, of investing is the Neubau, right? So basically, newly constructed apartments, which of course are very much more expensive, as we discussed initially. Therefore, also have a way lower rental yield. Right? But you have less work, less renovations, of course, that will come like in the next couple of years. And what's very interesting, the German government offers very good tax benefits on those. So you have 2 special depreciations, and for some properties that we have, you can write off like more than 50% of the property in the first 10 years. Right?
And that is with the so-called QNG standard, I think,
exactly.
right? Okay.
Exactly. So there's the Sonderafa and then the QNG siegel, that when you have that, then you have almost 10% depreciation for the first couple of years, right? Each year, which of course, when you have a very high salary, then it's still cash flow positive, even though it's a Neubau. So Neubau is very interesting for a very specific group of people, right? Maybe we will do another video regarding that, showing some examples. Just that you know, we also have that. Today we're going to focus on the Bestandsgebäude, which is something you can start right away, because for the Neubau you have to wait 1.5 years until it's built and already pay interest on the loans and all of that. So you have to have a bit, I always say, deeper pockets, right, to get started with a Neubau, and also a good down payment and a very high salary. So their 60K is not enough. There we would be talking in the 100K plus regions, right? If you have that, then very interesting.
Many people say Neubau is mostly for like doctors, dentists, and so on, and that makes sense because they obviously make a lot of money and pay a lot in taxes. So that's why QNG is especially interesting for those kinds of job categories.
Exactly, and like those job categories have even less time than many other ones. So for example, I have a client who has a very, very high position, makes like 250,000-300,000 per year, has like $1 million in equity, and he's buying massively in Neubau because it's just so nice to have like a positive cash flow out of the tax refunds. But you also got to have the good income and the time to wait also with a negative cash flow.
Totally. I'd say let's make a separate video about this one at another point. But it's great that you have this Bestandsimmobilie here with us, because I think it's more relevant for the majority of the people and my viewers.
I would also say perfect. Then let me share my screen and we will jump right in the Excel. So the first property that I bought, I mean, our company, we sit in Heidelberg, right? And we have a lot of properties in the Rhine-Neckar region, which is like a very structurally strong region, so very big companies, very good infrastructure. And the property that I brought is in the Speckgürtel of Heidelberg, so it's like 10 minutes away from Heidelberg. So in a very, very good location, right? And I think also for a very good price, but you will see in a second. All right, so we have the people who are already doing some calculations on their own and everything will see that this Excel sheet comes from Immocation, which is like a German, like the biggest German like real estate educators or companies who do like content on that. I really like that, so we use it. The apartment has 83 square meters, right? Just outside of Heidelberg, and costs 273,000 euros, which is a very, very, very good square meter price, right? So this like also these are deals that typically don't go on ImmoScout, right? So like the first year, for example, I was searching for investments. I searched on ImmoScout, right? And there, everyone who also searches there will know that like 99% of deals, when you calculate it with your Excel, then it's like cash flow negative and not really, worthwhile, right? So like what I found from experience, many of the good deals never make it to ImmoScout. So the first deal I bought of ImmoScout, and the next 5 apartments I bought from our investing service, right? That were never on ImmoScout.
Wow.
Right. So I'm a happy client there myself, basically, or me and my wife. So as you learned from Hans' video, also you always have around 10 or 11% Kaufnebenkosten, so like the closing cost essentially, like the makler, that's how we make our money essentially, like the brokerage fee, and then the taxes and the notary and everything. So for this specific property, you would need around 30,000 down, right? Or you would need to have 30,000 euros in order to be financeable for that. If you need to use it, that's another topic that we can get to in a second, because in many cases we can even lower that number that you need to put in as equity.
And this may be a bit too detailed, but I think interesting for some people. Just an addition real quick, the closing costs are also being depreciated in terms of you can deduct them from your taxable income, let's say. And I think that is also very interesting. So every cost, which is also shown here on this on the spreadsheet, can actually be depreciated over 50 years if you depreciate it with 2% or a higher amount, as we might see here in a second.
Yeah, exactly. That's very important. Yes, those costs are all tax deductible, but not right away, right?
Mhm.
So they are deducted over the using time of the building, right? The only cost is straight away tax deductible is basically everything related to the financing. So for example, with a notary, there's a different bill that you get where basically they put the bank in the Grundbuch, right? So this bill is tax deductible, right? It's like for an apartment like this, like $400 a month, but it's still nice to have a tax deductible. Everything else is spread basically over over the using time of the building. And being there, there's a very important point. So with most of the investment properties that we have, we checked that. You also made many videos about this. We don't need to go in detail there, but basically there's a thing called a Restnutzungsdauergutachten, where you can have a higher depreciation of the property than the standard 2%. Right? With this property, we have a Gutachten that shows 4.2%, right? Which is basically double the depreciation that you have normally. Right? The rental income here is 960 euros at the moment, which of course can be increased over time. Plus there's a Stellplatz, so for a car that is also rented for 50 euros. The cost that you cannot charge the renter for, plus the management, the rental management, is 133 euros. Right? So like it's like 83 euros, the nicht umlagefähiges Hausgeld, which is a good number for like an apartment size like this. Plus we always calculate the 50 euros in that the management company cost.
Okay. Yeah, nice.
So that's already included. So we always calculate our deals with 100% financing, that you just need to bring the closing costs and then finance 100% of the deal, which again, with a good salary is very much possible. We have around 4% interest at the moment for a 10-year interest period, right? And we always try to have as little tilgung as possible because that further enhances your cash flow. So your overall mortgage is going to be 1,200 euros. And the important thing for the first 10 years is the cash flow, which we see here, where everything is basically calculated together. So what you get in rent, what are your costs, what is your interest that you pay, and what do you pay back from the bank. And with a property in a very, very good location like this, right, this is typically the cash flow negative. Right? So in this case, basically 300 euros go more out for mortgage and cost than rental yield comes in. Right? So this is the normal scenario. Now, as we have a higher depreciation in this property, you save a lot of taxes with that. So with your tax declaration, you get back on a monthly basis, basically almost 400 euros that you save in taxes. So each year you save 5,000 euros in taxes with no renovations whatsoever. That comes on top. Right? Means even in this very, very good location, right, the property is after taxes cash flow positive. Means again the rental income plus the tax advantage pay off your mortgage, which is always our philosophy. This is always our goal, essentially, that all of the properties fulfill that.
Right. Yeah.
So that's an example of a property in a very nice location, and the cash flow is the important thing for the first 10 years. The second important thing is what happens in 10 years. Right? When you want to, for example, sell a property, or you can also keep it, but in many cases you want to sell after 10 years because it's completely tax-free in Germany. Right? And what we always calculate with in terms of appreciation of the property value, we just calculate with the normal inflation. So the inflation goal of the central bank in Europe is 2%. Right? So we just calculate your cost increases 2%, the rent increases 2%, and your property value increases 2%. Right? Now, you and I both know, and the viewers, that in many, many cases, when you buy in a good location with a good price, the appreciation is going to be much more than 2%. Right? But we always want to calculate very conservatively that you essentially have the worst case in mind, right, in terms of appreciation. And then when it's better than that, I think nobody has ever complained about that.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, totally. I also just calculate myself with 2%.
Yeah, which I think is very reasonable. So, and then the important thing is what is in 10 years, which you see in this part, basically. So with a 2% appreciation, your property is worth 339,000 euros, You still have remaining debt of 225,000 euros. You put in initially 30,000 or 28,000, right? You got a accumulated after tax cash flow of 11,000, means your netto profit, your after tax profit is 97,000 euros. And this is like why I really love real estate, because from a 28,000 euro investment, you can make 100,000 euro profit in 10 years, conservatively calculated. Right? I'm sure some of the properties that you have with the development, you could already realize like 100,000 gain, like after like 5 years, for example. But yeah, very conservatively calculated. When you do nothing, do no renovations, just increase the rent 2%, this would be the result.
Very nice. Cool. And that's just one apartment, right? Just imagine, I don't know, buying 2 to 3, 4, 5, 6 like you did as well. That just shows again the power sort of real estate in combination with taxes. Yeah, exactly, right. And what we do with many investors, because like the bottleneck oftentimes is the equity that you have, right? That is oftentimes the bottleneck is not your salary, it's oftentimes the equity, right? And like saving money from already taxed income is just hard right nowadays, you have to say, right? So when you have a very good salary and a good bonität, means you have low expensive, high income, right? Then what we can oftentimes do is that we can finance part of the closing cost also. Right, so the 28,000 that you need to put in, part of that in many cases we can also finance with the bank. Right? So the broker's fee almost never, but all the other fees. So for example, when we finance all the other fees within the deal, right, the taxes, the notar, and all of that, then you only need to put like 10,000 into the deal. Right? Of course, then your mortgage amount also increases 20,000. So let's calculate that. Then it's 293. So 3,000 in mortgage, and then you also pay a bit higher interest, right? So then it's like 4.2%, for example. Right? So then you see, yes, the property is a bit more cash flow negative. Right? You still save a lot of taxes, even more, because all the interest is tax deductible. And even then, okay, not 0 on 0, but you put in 26 euros each month. Right. Yeah. So like, and you just put a little bit of equity in there, and that's pretty much insane. Sort of what the result of that is, right? Exactly. So with almost no money, you purchase something that pays off itself, which is like the dream, right? Of course, we will get to life is never as pretty as the Excel sheet. We will get to that in a second. But that's what we can do with many investors. That's, for example, how I bought 5 of the 6 apartments we bought was with this model. Okay. Right? The first one, we had a bit of a down payment, right? In the other ones, we could finance really the big majority also of the deal. Okay, yeah, that's one of the first mistakes I made when I bought my first property. I put in way too much equity, and that's always also a question I receive: how much should I actually bring in terms of equity? And nowadays I just say, I don't know, just finance 100% or even more than that if possible. It just makes sense from a tax perspective and also for you in terms of liquidity management. Yeah, and then some people say, isn't that unsafe? And then I always answer, when you only have the 10,000, yes, of course. Then I would also never, then you cannot even buy this. We won't let you buy this, right? Right. But when you have the 30,000, right? And it's way better not to use 20 basically of it, because you still have the 20 in your bank account that you can do whatever you want with. You can just keep this as a safety cushion, right? Instead of when you put it into the deal, right? And then something happens, you have to go running back to the bank again or use other cash, right? So I always want to finance as much as possible, but of course, when I finance 100 or 110%, I always want to also keep cash aside, right? When something breaks, etc. Right? So like in many cases, there's like way more little than you think, right? Because you only hear the bad stories essentially. But of course, the apartment can be vacant for 2 or 3 months, right? If like a renter move out and you have to do some renovations, then you just gotta have the liquidity like to do that, right? So I always like an approximate amount. I try to keep 10% of my outstanding loans, right, in cash.
right?
Okay.
Or like in like very liquid investments. Right?
Okay.
Then I know, okay, you and I, we both have over €1 million in debt, right?
Yep.
For example, for €1 million in debt, I want to have 100,000 liquid like assets or
stocks,
just
maybe ETFs.
exactly broadly diversified ETFs, some just on the target scale or a money market fund. So that is always the recommendation, also to not to over leverage yourself.
Right.
Then you see, okay, the profit basically goes down a bit that you make because you pay higher interest, but you only put in like €8,800 initially, right? Which is insane from €8,800 to make a €90,000 profit.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So the bottom line is the more equity you put in, the worse your return on that equity is going to be. So it's always the goal to put as little equity in as possible because that's going to bring you the highest return.
Yep.
Huh?
Yep.
So that would be one example of a property with a very good location, therefore careful negative, and with very good tax advantages.
You can even see the return on equity or investment down there, right? And the Eigenkapitalrendite.
I always don't show this because it's too absurd.
I know, right? It's pretty insane. Of course, this includes the green part, at least the appreciation over time with the assumed 2%, which we said earlier. But even without appreciation, if you would put only 0%, let's say, so no appreciation at all in the coming years, as a sort of worst case scenario, you would still get a 40% return on investment.
You see that down here.
That's insane.
And again, that's insane. Yeah, and with the like 10% down payment that you put, I think the return on equity was around 30 to 35% there, which is still a very, very high number. So that's the first property. Any questions you have regarding this, or?
No, very interesting property. Of course, every viewer is going to ask whether this one is in particular still available. But this was just an example, right, for one which you had in the past. But you have similar deals out there which are just like this, right?
Exactly. So like these standard deals, like from let's say 200 to 300K. Like a good starter apartment, sometimes also 150. There we always have very good ones available that are like this, like the examples that I showed, right? Of course, the more specific and the higher it gets, there we need to then search specifically. So, for example, when you're one of the clients that I said, like you have 300K salary, you have 1 million in equity, then we specifically search for you for properties that might be fitted. Because, for example, then a multifamily would also be potentially fitted as a deal. But we don't have that on stock like just regularly because that goes like hard bonds, like the starter apartments. We have always very good deals. And then the higher it gets, the more specific we also search for you. Right? We have at the moment like a multifamily that costs 1.6 million. So that's a very, very nice deal with a very nice yield. But like that's not something that we have on stock like just regularly.
Right. It's not for everyone either, right? I mean, it's just for
no.
Special individual, I'd say.
Exactly. You should always, in my opinion, start with one apartment, then see, run this for some time. Okay, you see the rent going in, mortgage going out, rent going in, mortgage going out. Maybe like the water is leaking, then the property manager writes WhatsApp, hey, the water was leaking, I send a craftsman to fix it. Here is the €200 invoice, you pay that. So just get used to running it a bit and see how that goes. And then most of the time you like it, right? And then you can buy the next one.
People are getting hooked and then they want to scale up. Yeah.
Exactly. Like I always say, it's like an addiction. I literally always said it because once you understand how this works, you always want to buy more. Right. So then let me show you the second property, which is a bit more on the cash flow heavy side, essentially, right? So that's a property in the suburb of Kaiserslautern, right? So not as a good locations, for example, like the Speckgürtel of Heidelberg, of course. Right? I also have some apartments outside of Kaiserslautern. There's a very interesting renting models there that I will show you in a second, which makes it, in my opinion, very attractive. So yeah, this is 77 square meters. This apartment costs 340,000 approximately. So again, the closing cost is 25K approximately. If you finance 110, then the closing cost is 9,000 again. Here we, in like the Kaiserslautern area in specific locations, when the property fulfills specific needs, then like one of the biggest employers there is the US Army, right? Because they have in Ramstein their like air base, and they're currently building for 1 billion euros the biggest military hospital in Europe.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
So yeah, they are committed there, let's put it like this, and they are flying all of their Middle East stuff through like Ramstein, right? And all of the hospital area soldier who's like wounded goes to the hospital there. And so around this area, we can rent very good to US Army soldiers, essentially. That, of course, the ones that stay long term, the other ones are in the Kaserne. And there, basically, the property has to be in pretty good condition, right? And it has to be partly furnished, right? So there's like then so partly furnished, like you then basically have to get it approved by the US Army, by the renting association to be an approved apartment, right? And then you can rent to US soldiers, right?
Interesting.
That's what we did with also some of our apartments in that region. And essentially the ones that we sell, the process there is always already done, right? So there's everything is furnished, renovated, and certified and rented out, right? So all of this process, the investor has nothing to do with, right? That is always already done. And there we can achieve high rents in comparison to the market rent there. Right. Yes, in all of Germany, rents have been increasing like crazy, also in the Kaiserslautern region. But here, this apartment is rented for 1,300 euros per month. Okay. Which is a very, very good rental yield. There's also a bit of a Restnutzungsdauer increase, so it's like roughly 3%, but nothing crazy. Again, we have the Hausgeld plus the management fee is 110 euros. So the Hausgeld is 60 euros. That's nicht umlagefähig. The mortgage, we again finance 100%, of course, is like 1,000 approximately. And then you see on this cash flow calculation, you get in 1,300 rent, you have $100 in cost, you pay 800 euros interest, pay 250 back to the bank. So this is right away cash flow positive.
Right, before tax.
Before tax with a good amount, and you even pay a bit of taxes on that because it's also on the tax side cash flow positive. So there you get right away cash flow positive out of that, essentially, right? So this is also another model where it's like then right away cash flow positive, and where you actually can already draw money from that investment, essentially.
And it's a really good cash flow already, right? It's not only like 20, 30 euros. It's on the opposite. It's like 140 euros, which is pretty good, I'd say, especially if that would be your first investment, right? Yeah,
I mean, and the rental yield you see here is 6.5%, which is like very, very, very good. Right? Again, remember Munich is 3%, 2.5.
Totally.
Right. Then again, what happens in 10 years with the 2% appreciation? Your property is worth now 300,000 approximately. You still have 200,000 euros in remaining mortgage. You put in initially 25,000 euros. You get accumulated cash flow after taxes of 30,000 euros over that time, which I find very nice. So your overall profit is 103,000 euros. Which is very nice for like a 25,000 euro investment. There, the 2% appreciation might also be more realistic than, for example, in like the Rhein-Neckar region, right? At least that's what we've seen in the last 10 years. That like properties in very good locations appreciate a bit more than properties in other locations. Which, by the way, I read an article from an analysis from ImmoScout last week. Last year there was turning, so the properties on like last year the prices increased slightly in like the big cities, but increased way more in the like smaller cities, like in the not so good locations, quote unquote. So that of course can also be turning. Nobody knows what the actual future brings, but again, only calculated with 2% appreciation.
Very nice. Cool.
If you want, I can show some pictures. I have the allowance to do that. Just that you get a feel for how this like looks. Nothing crazy, just like a solid apartment with the floor being done. Here you see those furnishing things. You also, it doesn't have to be perfect. Everything you see the heating thing is like, you see that it's like from the 70s, right? That's like, but no worries. Just solidly done everything. Good solid kitchen into that.
Right.
Like the bath has been renovated, and yeah, so nothing crazy, but just like solid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, this property we can also calculate with a bit more little down payment. So when you just pay the brokerage fees and the other things we finance, right? So it's like 25 minus 8. So then we need 17,000 on top. So 239. 239 plus 17, right? So then we finance 256, right? Instead of this. So 256,000. We have a bit higher interest at 4.2. So there you see it's still cash flow positive, right? So you still get 75,000 euros out of the property, even though you only put 8,000 euros in initially. And then again, your Eigenkapitalrendite is very high again. But I always never show this because
it's too high. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, from an 8,000 euros investment, you made 96,000 euros profit when selling tax-free after 10 years.
Right. Really cool numbers. Yeah.
All right, those would be the two properties that I've brought, which reflect what we typically have in like the beginner range, basically apartments, right? Which like a typical real estate investment that you would like begin with, start with.
Okay, cool. Very nice. So of course, some people I think who have watched this video now want to get in touch with you, right? How would that work? What do you recommend?
Yeah, so we will put a link to our website where we basically where you can filter, where we can put in your information, and then we see if that fits or not. Basically, so your salary, your equity, and all of that, and what you're looking for, and then you can basically get in touch with us through that. The first consultation is for free, right? So there's no charge there whatsoever. You already get shown a property that fits your criteria. If you like it, then you can buy it and go through that entire process. For any, if you for some reason don't like it, then for any additional property that we show, we charge 250 euros, right? Which I think is very fair. What I'm gonna do for the viewers of this video, we also did this with the video with Ashan regarding real estate, that with the code Hans100, we will put it in the video here, you get 100 euros off that, right? So you get a bit of a discount on that consulting fee if you want more properties to be shown, that your viewers have this a bit of a nice cherry on top, essentially. Yeah, but that's a process. Cool. Just click on the link, fill in your info, then one of our consultants is gonna get in touch with you. Of course, everything completely English speaking. And then they will see your individual situation, what fits you, what are your goals, show you a specific properties that fit those needs. And then you can go through the financing process also with them and through the entire buying process. And then normally after a couple of months, you will contact your consultant again and say, hey, I want to buy the next one.
Okay, very nice. Okay, cool. Very, very thankful that you guys created this code and that we're sort of collaborating on this. So as you said, we're going to put the code here again as well. And if you're really interested, as David just said, just click on the link down below in the video description, and then it will be brought to their website InVertas. Very cool. David, thank you so much for being on this call and for giving us this introduction into real estate and your sort of work, what you guys do. I was really happy to talk to you about these topics, and I wish you all the best. And a couple of words from your side.
I can say the exact same. Thank you so much, Hans. It's always like a very pleasant conversation with you. It just feels like two buddies, two investors talking. So I really appreciate that. Thank you again for your work, and very nice that we have this cooperation and many great things to come from that in the future. Thank you.
Sounds good. And there will be more videos coming up. So yeah, make sure to subscribe to this channel and visit InVertas.
Comment, like, subscribe, comment your opinions and your experiences. Also good for the algorithm to push the video of Hans.
Right. Good idea. Good idea. Thanks, David. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.